The following information I found from searching the internet. This is about Masonic symbols, in this case, the shoe. Again, I don't advocate for Freemasonry. I think it's evil. I'm simply trying to use their information to extrapolate and explain what the symbolism may be esoterically connected to Trump's shoe that he lost on stage. There might be symbolism in that, and that's what I'm exploring. So the shoe, as a Masonic symbol, is employed to remind us of the duty of constancy and fidelity in our engagements. Remember that word fidelity? Because I'm going to bring that up again in reference to a couple of movies later. That whatever contract we make, we must honestly fulfill. Whatever work we undertake, we must perform to the utmost of our power, not undertaking any work which we do not believe ourselves to be well capable of performing, nor promising its completion within a time which we cannot reasonably regard as sufficient for it. It is thus a symbol having reference to conduct in the common affairs of life, but the duties of which it reminds us are, nevertheless, duties, the obligation of which must be referred to the highest principles, to those of justice and truth. The use of this symbol is derived from an ancient custom of the Jews, of which we read in the book of Ruth, in the account of the transaction between Boaz and his kinsman, who was nearer in relationship to Ruth than himself, concerning the redemption of the land that had been Elimelech's, and concerning the marriage, in accordance with the Jewish law, of Ruth the Moabites, the widowed daughter-in-law of Elimelech. The transaction took place in the gate of their city, in presence of 10 men of the elders of the city. And when the kinsman refused to redeem the land and to marry the youthful widow, saying, I cannot redeem it, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. He drew off his shoe and gave it to Boaz, and this formality is thus spoken of by the narrator. Now, this was the manner in the former time of Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to conform all things. A man drew off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, Buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. That's from Ruth IV 6-8. This was done in accordance with a law which we read in the book of Deuteronomy, and in which probably an ancient custom was sanctioned. See Deuteronomy XXV 5-10. It was a custom somewhat similar to that long enforced by the law of Scotland in the completion of sales of land or of mortgages on land, of the handling of earth and stone from the one party to the other. The transference of the handful of earth and stone being in token of the transference of the right of property. And again, remember that transference of rights of property, as I'm going to go into that again shortly hereafter. So the kinsman who relinquished his right may be understood as saying to Boaz, I give over to thee all my right in this matter, as fully as I now give thee this shoe. I divest myself of it as completely as I do of this shoe. And the elders of the city, having witnessed this transaction, the bargain was completed and could not be wrestled from. The shoe as a symbol reminds the Freemason that his contracts are never to be resiled from, but faithfully implemented, even if he should find them less profitable than he expected. This principle of rule, however, is only applicable to contracts fairly made. If a man has been entrapped into a contract by false representations on the part of another, he may honestly and honorably renounce it as soon as he discovers the imposition which has been practiced upon him. If, however, after discovering this, he still proceeds for a time as if he had made no such discovery, he must be regarded as having condoned the offense, and is then bound by the contract. It is as if, in full knowledge of the facts, he entered into it anew. So the symbolism of giving up one's shoe is akin to renouncing your claim on land, property, or real estate of some kind. It also seems to be connected somewhat in the stories to infidelity or marriage of some kind. So keep that in mind while we're going to review a couple of movies. So my research led me to look for movies that were about one shoe or had one shoe in the title, etc. And I found a couple movies that fit that category. The first movie I found was from the 1980s. It's like a TV movie called One Shoe Makes It Murder. In this movie, a retired cop is hired by a wealthy man to find his wife. It turns out that the wife was cheating on him, so there is that theme of infidelity that we talked about. And the second film also included infidelity in its plot, but we'll cover that in a minute. Also, both films included illusion in that things were not as they seemed. And both films also included attempted murder and loaded weapons. So, we talked about how there's infidelity in One Shoe Makes It Murder. Well, illusion was at hand in the movie too. When the unfaithful wife seemed to have unalived herself as she fell to the ground from a high-rise apartment building, it seemed like that's what happened, like she unalived herself. But there was something of an illusion as to what really happened. Also, the unfaithful wife in this movie hid who she truly was from her husband. She portrayed herself as somebody other than what she was. And a faithful friend of the husband found out, but helped to allow the illusion to continue out of fear that it would hurt his friend who he knew and who he had worked for. At the end of the movie, a character was aiming at the husband, but inadvertently ended up killing the friend instead. So it's similar in that sense to what happened, in my opinion, with the whole Trump thing. Because, in my opinion, the whole thing was an illusion. And then, as the story goes, innocent bystanders ended up getting hurt, at least as to what our knowledge is at this point. Okay, so now that we talked about that, now we're going to go on to movie number 2. The second movie is titled The Man with One Red Shoe. And there you go, with another movie with one shoe in the title. In this movie, the infidelity starts almost right away, near the beginning. Not at the beginning, but near the beginning, as the character played by Tom Hanks makes love with his friend's girlfriend. So there is your infidelity right off the top. The illusion comes straight from the beginning, too, as his character is mistaken for a spy on purpose to throw off the CIA. So one could say that Trump's rally in Butler was not what it seemed to be either. There were also people aiming at Tom Hanks' character, but it was other characters in the film who did not fare as well as he did by not being hit. Where, in fact, one of the characters in the movie ended up dying. They were more like a standing character, but still, nonetheless. Just like at the Butler rally. The only thing missing from the movies was the redemption of a land deal. Although in One Shot Makes Murder, the failed marriage, like the failed marriage in The Man with One Red Shoe, is symbolically like renouncing a land deal in that the groom would be symbolically married to the land. Which brings me to the infidelity of Trump. And I am not talking about something like Stormy Daniels. What I mean is the infidelity to being honest to the United States. A president is a bit like the groom, and the country is a bit like the bride. So if there is any intended symbolism in Trump's missing shoe, like as in Masonic symbolism, as we talked about at the beginning of this, perhaps the meaning is that he is renouncing his claim to the land, or renouncing his claim to the United States. Not in the election, but afterwards in general. Or in layman's terms, he is going to sell us out in the future, meaning the United States will be renounced. Think about it. Now, I'm not claiming that this definitely is connected. What I'm saying is there's enough there to give food for thought. Just something to think about. Okay, so one last example I have that might make a bit more sense, or make it easier to digest. In the movie Cinderella, the Disney version, Cinderella leaves her shoe behind, or leaves her glass slipper behind. So in the culture where that story originally comes from, in the original versions, losing that shoe meant something completely different. There was a symbolism attached to it. So it's similar to infidelity in the sense that when Cinderella loses her shoe, what she's really losing is her virginity according to the original story. if you were understanding the meaning of that culture and understanding the symbolism. So losing one's virginity in that sense before marriage is sort of like infidelity or something. But don't get caught too much up in infidelity in a physical way. It's the symbolism. So the symbolism of losing the shoe means you've lost fidelity to the land. So you're giving up the land itself because you're the groom. The land is the bride, so to speak. So there you go.